So the next theme is very much related to the previous theme about the rise of moral relativism. And that theme is the de-emphasis on objective truth and the blurring of the lines of what is fact and the rise of the concepts of misinformation and disinformation. So what's very important to understand about surviving and thriving during any Neptune transit is that Neptune is, you can think of it tipping a balance in a very heavy way to heavily emphasize a sign. And so what we have to do is we have to regain that balance. And so what we need to do is look at the opposite sign that Neptune is transiting and emphasize those characteristics to bring stability to Neptune's longing and heavy emphasis on trying to connect to something greater than ourselves in a particular sign. So that heavy emphasis needs to be balanced with the opposite sign. So with all of the Piscean characteristics that people have been longing to connect with on a very deep level, it came at the expense of Virgo characteristics, the opposite sign of Pisces. So Virgo is factual, direct, undeniable information, and it's the concrete truth of things. It's like, that's why very heavy Virgo people are can be very mathematical and dry people, because math it's either on or off, it's yes or no. It's a direct factual paradigm. It's concrete facts. So with the de-emphasis of Neptune and Pisces, the de-emphasis was on objective truth. And so then objective truth is now up for debate. So there was this loss of grounding in finite reality. And Virgo is an earth sign, and grounding ourselves into a pure and inarguable truth. And so an example that I like to use is the question of, is there such thing as objective truth, is to say, well, you see that object in the sky, the sun or the moon, can you stop it from being on the horizon today? All life on earth recognizes that that's the sun in the sky. It's up there giving life to all of creation. That's objectively true. It's there. You could say it's not there, but it is there. So no matter how much you want to deny that it's there, it's still there. So that means that objective truth exists. The question is what are objective truths if we know that they can exist? Because look, can you stop the sun from rising? No, you can't. No matter how much you want to imagine that it's not there, or you want to call the sun the moon or whatever. That's that object. Call it whatever you want. It's there. It's objectively there. So Neptune in Pisces, this era was the time when the narrative was sold that you cannot trust your eyes and ears. When institutions and governments use the terms dis and misinformation, when they use them as blunt force objects to essentially instill doubt into people of what they were reading, watching, or perceiving about the world. You can't be sure of anything. And so it casts doubt of what is objective truths. And people who were using many terms of, say, disinformation, of information that they may not agree with, they're starting to call it the post-truth era. But there is no such thing as post-truth. Truth is always there. There's always going to be truth. But we can become confused about what the truth is. And we can be deliberately confused about what the truth is. And we saw a massive push during this time period to question narratives being passed by governments or powerful institutions that are running society, who rely so much on who have an invested interest in to keep this current system in place. And I'll talk a lot more about that when I speak about the positive. I'll talk more about the positive events of Neptune and Pisces. But you see this push for disinformation and misinformation, the attempt to confuse on what we can actually see and perceive, and people are questioning the narrative. You're telling me this is true. There's this overarching thing, but I don't know if that's right or not. Hence the introduction of, oh, well, you just listen to misinformation. So the blurring of what could be an objective fact or not. And consider this phenomenon beyond the fight over misinformation and disinformation as well. So Pisces' ruler Jupiter is the force within us that's creating an ideology or a belief system. And Neptune in Pisces created this deep longing to reinforce one's own ideology at the expense of objective truth. We saw some people have that nice balance of that what is most important to me is if it's true or not, wherever that may lead. But on the other end, ideology, this desire for the intense validation of one's own belief system, the longing to connect deeply with one's own belief system, that they will ignore objective truth. So a great example of this is that editors of some of the most prestigious medical journals have come out and declared that it's possible that more than half of the papers that they published are useless, and that the experiments that they were conducting can't be replicated, or they made major assumptions about very minuscule findings. So what that means is the ideological bent of the researchers clouded their judgment and their ability to objectively analyze the world. That was all sidelined in order to publish findings that validate their belief system, their subjective way of seeing the world, even though, and we're seeing that ideologically based medical research, it doesn't hold up to scrutiny. And some have been fabricated altogether or manipulated, just like how you can manipulate polling data. Things have all been seeking to validate and find complete validation, or better said, complete fulfillment in one's own belief system. Jupiter, the ruler of Pisces, being the planet of belief system. So Pisces has this important belief system component to it. So take that medical idea. Virgo is the natural sixth sign, and it's an important sign for physical health and overcoming acute sicknesses. So the narratives being pushed of Neptune and Pisces based on ideologies about health and well-being became so much more important than actual physical health, the on-the-ground real nature of how our bodies work. So this dissolution, Neptunian dissolution of objective truth by Neptune in Pisces was what happened is it was serving ideological or subjective narratives. And I believe that culminated in the corona narrative, the corona pandemic narrative, which was not allowed to be questioned. It was essentially a belief system that was always changing, and now we see so much of the original narrative being dismantled. But it was based on so many nebulous truths, so to say, and all of those facts were changing at the speed of science, they would say. And it was all basically ideologically driven by those in power. Again, the pushing of a narrative. The era of the narrative reached, again, a culmination with that. This massive story being told that may or may not have anything to do with the objective facts. That's a major culmination point of Neptune in Pisces. So this Neptunian longing to connect with narratives on a deep level was taken to such an extent that, again, connection to reality was completely lost. What was needed was a better concrete, black and white, true-false analysis, which is the ability of Virgo. Let's just look at what is going on without any ideological bent, just the search for objective truth. That was lost, and that was heavily emphasized. So those who were able to use their objective mind and analyze narratives, analyze what could be true or not, and critique the narrative being pushed were the people who were experiencing a healthy transit of Neptune and Pisces, because they had that balance with Virgo. And they weren't being swept away in vague assumptions of things, or drowned by narratives that could not stand up to basic scrutiny. Again, that's what the danger of the Piscean ocean is, to be swept away or to drown in untrue things or illusions.